What's up, all my nostalgia? Dave here with a review of the Jonas Brothers' sixth album, The Album. This is their sixth album, but really their second album since ending that hiatus, signing Republic Records, and getting back together as a group in 2019 when we got Happiness Begins, which was a huge smash hit album. Really kind of came out of nowhere, that success to me. Selling like 400,000 units first week, several singles going multi-platinum, like Only Human and Sucker and Cool. And Jonas Brothers kind of reestablishing themselves really quickly as a arena act, a huge pop force. Not the biggest force in pop, but a significant one nonetheless. And since then, that was pre-pandemic. We've been waiting. Nick had a solo album come out, Spaceman. But I think ultimately this is a group, and the Jonas Brothers as individuals, this is a group that they're just better together, like a lot of groups are. And I think the music is at its most interesting when they're together. In the case of the album, I think this is a really safe record where it doesn't really like push any boundaries. Not that it doesn't have sonic inspirations. I think that's probably the best thing about the album. Taking a lot of funk influence. The Jonas Brothers have done a lot of press for this record. Went to a bunch of sporting events like the NFL Draft, Knicks, and Lakers game. They've been around, and yet they have really kind of had the same tenor in how they talk about this music. Citing Stevie Wonder, citing the Bee Gees. Hall & Oates comes to mind when you listen to some of this music. Clearly the influence is there, and I think that's the most fun stuff about this music, because lyrically they're a safe group. I think at their worst they can be a bit vanilla, a bit plain, but on the other hand, it's like pretty solid music. It's always quite listenable. I think vocally, Nick is always the most engaging of the group. That's really nothing new. Some of the music he's able to he's able to belt it out a little bit more, just kind of get a little bit raw with his vocals than Joe really can, you know. And I think this is, kind of just a solid record. I don't know if there's anything that really rises up and is a true earworm the way Only Human was on the last album. I don't think we really get there on this, but I still think there's a handful of songs I quite enjoyed. I think one of the early singles, Waffle House, actually kind of stood out to me. I like the vocals on that. The call and response to that chorus, I think, is really fun. Yeah, I think, starting towards the top, Montana Sky, the brothers sound really nice there vocally, just harmonizing together. Kind of simple stuff. But Americana track 5, I really like the tempo on that, more of an acoustic vibe instrumentally. That one's fun. I think one of the best songs here would be track 6, Celebrate. The Nick vocals have a bit more punch to those, but the horns really stand out on that track. And at this kind of point when the album changes, because you have Celebrate and Waffle House back to back. I think Vacation Eyes, track 8, is also pretty solid. The bass line, I believe it's Kevin on bass, sounds really good. But it's a slow down, I think overall, throughout this album, there's some fun vocal effects that the brothers do, whether they're almost ad-libbing each other as they sing verses or parts of verses, or even just doing little bits of overdubbing and stuff, having these other choruses and other voices brought in as well. It at least keeps you a bit engaged the whole time. And what's kind of fun about this album too is it's quite brisk. It's 13 songs, 12 songs, 32 minutes. It's quite quick. And I think that's why it's hard to be too critical of this, because it's pretty solid, pretty quick, has some fun moments, And I think if you're a Jonas Brothers fan, this will probably just kind of satiate the need. Not, like I said, I don't think it really hits the highs of some of their past work, and even earlier hits, like the true bangers, like an SOS. There's no SOS on this. That's okay though. I think they're both, all three of them now are parents and all married. They're probably in a different stage of their career, but interesting to see them on the promo run with this, because they've been heavily promoting this album. And the singles, Waffle House, as well as I believe Wings, haven't really taken over the way when Sucker came out. That was a huge hit right away. This album seems to be coming with a lot less fanfare. So I'm curious to see how this goes for them overall. I think another song I like, track 10, Summer Baby. I think the synths really stand out there on that one. Fun vocal performance, almost Charlie Puth-esque, and which kind of reminds me or made me think of like, imagine if Charlie Puth wrote the lyrics for some Jonas Brothers songs. Because I think Jonas Brothers, the weakness of their music, if you want to pick a weakness, is lyrics. They, like I said, they're plain, they're vanilla, they're not overly ambitious with their songwriting. If you had someone who's like a songwriting savant, like Charlie Puth, punching up their music, that'd be pretty cool. And I think the Jonas Brothers, even though they're signed to Republic, they work with plenty of producers. John Bellion is a key influence on this album. He produced almost every song. I believe every song, actually. It seems like the writing is still Brothers focused, right? All three of those guys are credited on every song, but there's other people involved. Um, I'd be curious if they had someone with like a clear point of view involved. I'd be curious if their creative process would change all that much. Um, Best pie in the sky idea. I don't think anything something like that would ever happen. But just the thought I had, because that song "Summer Baby" kind of reminded me of like a Puth song, a Puth performance, in a sense. Um, Little Bird, I think Nick sounds really good, really kind of belting out, getting a bit raw, a bit more emotional with his vocals than he did on most of the album. Yeah. So overall, I think it's a pretty solid album, and I'm really just curious about how this performs and what's next for the Jonas Brothers. I can't imagine they would take another, 4 years off from making music, assuming they want to continue their careers as major pop forces. I assume they do. So we'll see what's next for the Jonas Brothers. But let me know how are you feeling about this album. And for more music reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.